Hello, hello. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this edition of Notion at Work. I am William Nutt of Nutt Labs, and we're an integrated digital strategy firm and Notion consultancy, typically based in New York, but still quarantining down in North Carolina, where I am from originally. And I also run the independent website Notion VIP, where I publish tools and insights about all things Notion. You can access that at notion.vip. So today we're going to explore contact and sales management in Notion. And Notion is really a powerful place to manage your relationships of all kinds and your sales pipeline. And that's much thanks to its multi-formatted relational databases. So we're going to walk through a framework that leverages those functionalities to create a sophisticated and streamlined system of contact and sales management in Notion. And that system is also detailed within a text post on Notion VIP, which I'll link to here in the chat, and you may want to reference as you implement these strategies on your own. And there's also a fully developed template with this system already in place, which I can't make available entirely for free. But if you use the discount code Notion at Work, all one word, within the next hour or so, you'll be able to get it at just half the price. So I'll link to that here in the chat as well. So if you've referenced any of my other resources, or if you're using my bulletproof workspace methodology, which I recently updated, by the way, so be sure to check that out, you know that my foremost recommendation for any Notion workspace is to centralize information within related master databases, and then to create filtered views of that information within contextual dashboards. So this contact management system is kind of a subset of a broader workspace that's going to integrate a variety of those related master databases, such as the bulletproof workspace. So we're going to be focused on two core master databases. We're going to have our contacts database for individual people, and then we're going to have a brands database for the companies and the nonprofits and the other organizations that those individuals represent. And as a part of this approach to centralizing information in master databases, we're also going to favor relation properties over select properties. So if you're unfamiliar with relation properties, they allow you to connect one database to another, and then you can choose from the items in the other database to populate the value for an item in the first database. So take countries, for example. Throughout your workspace, you may have a few different databases where you want to assign a country to the items. And rather than creating an independent select property within each of those databases and creating all of the countries as options within those select properties, you can maintain one central master database of countries and then relate all of those other databases to that master database of countries. And then you'll be able to choose among those countries in every instance of those relation properties. And this approach to maintaining master databases and using relation properties versus these independent select properties, it's going to offer a range of benefits. So you'll be able to keep your information accurate and consistent, and you'll also reduce redundancy in your work. This will allow you to create contextual dashboards, as you'll see, and it'll also allow you to navigate intuitively among all of your related databases. So for these and other reasons, that's why we are going to start with a few geographic databases. So here we have all of the databases we'll be looking at, all of those included in the template. You can see that we have our core brands and contacts databases that we'll really be focusing on for the system. But here we have those three geographic databases. We have a countries database, a states and provinces database, and a cities database. And so the cities database is kind of the hub of these relationships, as you'll see. All of the cities will be related to brands and contacts. So the cities database is related to the contacts database and the brands database. And then the cities is related also to the states and provinces database and the countries database. So because everything runs through the cities, it's kind of our hub database, we can use roll-up properties to pull in the country and the state when we relate a contact to a city or a brand to a city. And you'll see exactly how that's going to work, but it's going to save you a lot of time, and it's going to ensure that your information is really bulletproof, for lack of a better description. And it's also going to allow you to see filtered views of all of your contacts and brands within the countries and within the states and provinces and within the cities. So let's jump into the cities database. You can see that our default view here is the list view. And what this does is it displays the city and it displays the city's corresponding country. And it sorts the list first by country and then by the name of the city. So this is a nice way to view your cities and to choose one to click on. But if we also have a table view here that allows us to edit the cities kind of in bulk and also to edit the individual properties. So you can see the title property is city. This is where, of course, we type in the name of the city. And then we have our relation properties. So this first relation property relates the city's database to the states and provinces database. So for each city, as applicable, we can choose a state or province from that database. And then similarly, we also have a relation to the country's database, where we can choose the country that corresponds with the city. And the country's flag displays nicely with the city because that flag is the country's icon, which you will see. So we have two hidden properties here. We have the contacts property and the brands property. These are also relation properties. And this is where you can relate a city to a contact and relate a city to a brand as well. But typically in your workflow, you'll be selecting and creating cities from contacts and brands databases rather than from this city's database. So that's why these are hidden here. And of course, I'll show you exactly how that will work. So if you open up a city, it kind of serves as its own contextual dashboard. Here we can open up New York and we can see all of the relation properties. We can see that it's related to the country of the United States, the state of New York, and then it's related to a brand called Progress Labs, and then a handful of contacts here. These are all items that exist within other databases. And part of what that allows us to do is have filtered views of those other databases. So we have linked databases here. They're both formatted in the gallery format. And here we have a filtered list of the brands that are in the United States and a filtered list of the contacts that are in the United States. You can see if we look at the filter, we're in a city now. So we have the brands that are in this city of New York and the contacts that are in New York City as well. So where in those other databases, the city property is populated with the city of New York, we display those items for both the brands and the contacts. And you can see for the brands database, we have the name of the brand with the website that's easy to click. And then for the contacts, we display the full name. We display the brand that's related to the contact. And then we display the contact's email address and phone number. So again, these are linked databases. They're kind of windows into the other databases, and they're filtered and formatted to display just as we want them within this city. So rather than adding these elements for each new city that you create, we can automatically populate them with a template. So if you use this arrow next to the new button here, you see that we have a template called city that we've created. And if you edit that template, you can see the linked databases that we've added for both the brands and the contacts database. And we have what's called a self-referencing filter. So this filter is referencing this template. The template is called city. So when you implement this template, when you create a new city using this template, that new city will replace this placeholder here, and the brands and contacts databases will be filtered automatically for that new city. So the city, because it's kind of the hub of all of these relationships, it has more of these relation properties than the others. The states and provinces and the countries are a little bit simpler. So let's take a look at those. First, let's look at the countries. So the default view for the countries database is going to be a list, just a simple list of the countries and sorted alphabetically. And then we have that table view that's a little bit easier to edit and to view all of the properties. So you can see this is where the only relation for countries is a relation to cities. And because the country is related to its cities, then any other database that's related to that city is going to be able to pull in this country. And that's why we can populate the country automatically for each contact and each brand, because both of the databases are related to the same city. And the same with the states. So the states will be related to the city. So for every city that's related to this country, we can pull in the state using this roll-up property. If we look at the configuration here, we can see that we've chosen for the relation the cities property. So for each of the cities that are added here, we want to pull in its state or province, and we just want to show the original one. So that's why for the United States, for example, we see multiple states, because we have multiple cities. It's pulling in the state for each of these cities. And just as we saw with the city, if we open up a country, we have this contextual dashboard. So here you can see that we have all of the brands that are in the United States, and we have all of the contacts from the contacts database that are in the United States. They're filtered to show only the items where the country is the United States. And of course, just as we saw with the city, we can pre-populate this information with the country template that uses a self-referencing filter. So jumping back over to our list of databases here, we can take a quick look at the states and provinces database. So this begins with a list, and it begins with a filtered list. So if you're using a country where your contacts and your brands fall within a variety of states and provinces within a single country, then it might be helpful to create a filtered view of states and provinces for that country. So here we have a view specifically for U.S. states. It's a list, and it's filtered to show only the states that are in the United States, where its country is the United States. And of course, it's sorted alphabetically. But we can also view a full table that includes all states and provinces in this kind of sample database. And its only relation is cities, because remember, everything's running through cities. And then when we relate a state or province to a city, we have the ability to pull in the countries that are related to those cities. So that is going to be the same country for each of the cities. And right now, Notion doesn't offer a way to show just the unique values. You need to show each of the countries for each of the cities. They're always going to be the same, but the purpose of this is to allow us to create filtered views. So even though it's got the same country listed multiple times, it does not impact our ability to do that. And of course, the states and provinces open up and they display their unique contacts and brands, but we don't need to look at another example of that because we are focused on contacts and brands. But you can see here that we have that template in place for states and provinces as well. So let's move into the contacts and brands. Of course, these are the essential elements of our system here, and we'll start with brands. So the first view of our brands database is going to be a gallery of brands that fall into the clients category. And these, we have a gallery for each of our different brand categories for the most part. And the gallery displays the name of the brand. It pulls in the country and displays it with this nice icon. And I think I may have forgotten to mention, if we pop back over to our countries database, the way that you add these flags here is you choose the flag as the icon for the page of the country. So these icons are just emojis. And so you can, you can search for the name of the country, find its flag, and use it as the icon. And so anywhere the country is referenced, you'll see that nice country flag. So going back into our brands database, we have that nice icon associated with the country that's associated with the brand. And then once again, we just have that website that we can easily click on to. So we have these galleries for each category of brand. So, but let's look at the full brands table that has all of our brands. And here we can see all of the different properties that we have for the brand. So the title property is going to be called brand. And then we have a multi-select property to identify the categories for each brand. So we have a few different options here. We have each brand can be a client. Here we have a Loggerhead Labs, which is kind of the dummy company I use for these demonstrations. So that would be your own team. A client or a brand can be a partner. It can be a prospect, or it can be a vendor. And of course, you can customize these categories to suit the nature of your workspace. So then we have a URL property for the brand's website, which we've displayed throughout the gallery views as we've seen. We have a phone property for the brand's phone number. And then we have our geographic properties. So we only choose the city from the city's database. And once again, because the city is kind of the intersection of all of these relationships, when we choose a city within the brands database, we're able to pull in automatically the state and the country for that city using these roll-up properties. So then we have a couple of text properties, one for the postal code and one for the street address. And you might think that the postal code should be a number property, but it's really treated as text. You don't perform calculations on a postal code. And if you try to make it a number, it can act a little funky in instances where the code begins with a 0. So it's best to use the text property for a postal code. And then the street address is straightforward. And then we have a select property for the sales stage. So when your brand falls into the prospect category, when it's a prospect, you can assign it a position in your sales pipeline. Now, a conventional CRM might have a third essential master database. So it would have a contacts database or a people database like we have. It will have a companies or a brands database like we have. And then it might have an opportunities or a deals database. But I found in my work with clients and other users and in my own work that the brands database can really function as the sales funnel as well. And it likely will for you. But if you do have multiple instances of your sales cycle within your brands or within your clients, if you pitch them and go through the entire cycle for various projects, you might want to have an independent deals or opportunities database. But in the vast majority of implementations, it works perfectly fine to use your brands database as your sales pipeline. So when you do that, it gives you the opportunity to have a sales pipeline view. So this is a board, just like a Kanban board, and it's filtered to show only the brands who are in the prospect category, and then it groups them by their position in the sales cycle. So you can easily drag them through the sales cycle as you advance them, and that is going to update that property automatically as you drag them. So that's how your brands database can function as both just your database of brands for referencing however you want to, as well as your sales pipeline. Now, as with all of our other databases, your brands can function as their own independent contextual dashboards. So you can see here within the contents of a brand's page, we have, once again, a filtered view of the contacts database. And this is filtered, of course, to show the contacts that are related to this particular brand. Now, you also see that we have a filtered view of a meetings and conversations database. And of course, we're not focused on meeting management. That's in some other resources and part of the bulletproof workspace. But I've included it here just to demonstrate that for prospects, you might want to relate them to certain meetings, to certain conversations that you have with them, and then you'll have the ability to reference those meetings and conversations as you nurture them through the sales pipeline. So we'll see the other end of this connection here, but this is a database of meetings and conversations, and it's filtered to show only the meetings and conversations where the prospect selected for that meeting and conversation is this company, which is Progress Labs. So of course, these are templates. We have a prospect template that includes those two linked databases, meetings and conversations, as well as contacts. And then we have just a brand template that might not be a prospect, and that's going to exclude the meetings and conversations linked database. Because if you've seen my other resources and you've utilized the bulletproof workspace, then you know that when a brand becomes a client, then it can also become a bucket. And that's where you'll have an elaborate contextual dashboard for not just tracking the contacts and the meetings associated with that client, but also the projects and the tasks and a variety of other useful databases. So that is the brand's database. And of course, we have all of these different views for accessing them in a way that's not quite as overwhelming as this table view, but this table view makes them easy to edit in bulk. So that takes us to our contacts database. And the initial view of the contacts database, just like we saw in the brands database, it's a gallery of our clients. So client is of course, a category of our contacts. And we have various galleries for all of our contacts, for all of our contact categories. And then we also, of course, have a full table. So the title property is just going to be the full name of the contact. And rather than redundantly populating the category for the contact, what we can do is use a roll-up property to pull in the category from the brand, because the contact category is going to be the same as the brand's category. So we have a relation to the brand's database where we choose the contact's brand. Typically, it'll be its employer. So we can choose that, and then this roll-up property pulls in the category for that brand, which allows us to create these other filtered views. So when we configure this rollup, we choose the brand property, the relation property, and then for that database, for that related database, what we want to do is pull in the categories. In most cases, it'll just be one category. It may be a few because it is a multi-select property. And then, of course, we just want to show the original value. Quick sip of coffee. And so then we have text properties where you can separate the first name and the last name. And in some cases, if you're familiar with formulas, you can do that programmatically, but it'll probably be easiest for most users just to do it manually. So it's good to have a separate first name property if you're using like a mail merge tool where you have kind of a generic message that you're sending to an audience and you want to populate their name. You want to personalize the message with their first name as an introduction. And then I like to use the last name property for sorting. I like to sort these galleries by last name. So with the last name separated here, you're able to do that. We talked about the brand property. We have a text property for the job title, which may be helpful, and you may want to display that within your gallery views. We have an email property for the email address of the contact, which of course you've seen in our gallery views. We have two phone number properties, one for the mobile, one for work. The mobile is displayed in our galleries. And then we have two URLs, one for the LinkedIn profile, the other is for the Twitter profile. And then we have those geographic properties again. So the city property is a relation property. This is where you choose the city for the contact. And when you do that, because the city is the hub, our roll-up properties automatically pull in that city's state or province and that city's country. And then we have our text versions of our postal code and street address properties again. And then the contacts database includes a date property for the birthday, which you can populate with the contact's birthday and make it a reminder if you want, so that you can send well wishes or a gift if the contact is particularly lucky or valuable. And then the last property here is a files and media property for the contact's headshot. And of course, you're not going to want to populate the headshot for every single one of your contacts, but for those you engage with regularly, you might want to, particularly your own team members, because what you can do then is when you have these gallery views, you can use the headshot as the card preview, and it makes for a really nice viewing experience. It makes it a little bit more personable, and you're able to put a face to all of those comments and emails that you're exchanging. So this sample has a gallery for the Loggerhead Labs team. You can see here that the card preview selected is that headshot property. And so it pulls in the headshot, that uploaded photo, to populate the card preview. So for the team members, we also display the full name, the email address, and then the phone number as well. So those are our essential databases of the system, the contacts and brands databases. Now, I mentioned I have a few other kind of dummy databases because in your workspaces, particularly if you're following the bulletproof approach, you're going to have a variety of other master databases, and they're all interrelated. And a lot of them are going to be related to your brands and to your contacts, because you're going to want to show filtered information within these related databases. So we saw within our brands database for the prospects, we saw a filtered list of the meetings and conversations. So this is just a very stripped down view of meetings and conversations. Of course, if you have an actual meetings and conversations database, it's going to contain a lot more information. And I cover that in some other resources. But if you open up one of these meetings or conversations, you can see that it includes a list of the contacts that are related to it. So this has a relation to the contacts database. And we called it attendees because within this property, you can select from your contacts who will be attending the meeting or conversation and then display them within the page contents. This can be helpful for you. It can be helpful for them. If they have headshots, you can use them as the card previews, and it'll make for a really nice sort of framing of a nice conversation. So the other sample database I have here is the projects database. And almost every Notion workspace is going to have some variation of a projects database. And it's oftentimes helpful to relate it to contacts and brands. In the case of the Bulletproof framework, it's related to buckets, which are your clients in many cases. So if we open up a project page, you can see that once again, we have a filtered list of our contacts database. This time it's filtered to show only the contacts that are on the project team. So this project team property is a relation property, and it's related to the contacts database, and you can populate it with the contacts who are working on the project. And those contacts are going to display nicely within this gallery. So these sample databases, the meetings and events and the projects database, I don't have it configured here because this is just a demo, but in the templates for your projects and for your meetings, you would include those filtered lists of contacts with a self-referencing filter, and that's going to give you the ability to display all of the related contacts within your meetings and conversations and within your projects. So that with the sample databases, our geographic databases, and then, of course, those essential brands and context databases. That is this system of managing contacts and relationships of all kinds, really, including your sales prospects within this system that utilizes Notion's advanced functionalities, particularly its related master databases that can be formatted in so many different nice ways. So in the follow-up email, I'm going to include a link to the post and to the recording of this webcast and to the template for you to reference as you implement these strategies on your own. And if you hit any roadblocks anywhere, you can find me on Twitter. I'd love to help you through it. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. If you don't mind using the Ask a Question feature, if you're viewing in Crowdcast, I will respond to any questions that you may have there. And if you see a question that you like, you can upvote it. So let me open up that feature here. And the template you showed for the city, can you explain the relating to itself part, please? So let me go back to that. And the city, okay, the self-referencing filter is what you're asking about. I will be happy to demonstrate that because that's a really important part of this and an important part of all of your databases, because it's a powerful tool that's actually relatively new. So if we go into our cities template, so let's just create a new template. Say we haven't created our city template yet. We'll just call this city number 2. And so what we're going to want to do is we have that within each city, we're going to include a linked view of the brands that are in the city and a linked view of the contacts that are in the city. So let's just do the brands. We will insert a block that is a linked database. And when we do that, we'll have the opportunity to search for our brands database. Now, I obviously have a lot of brands databases within my workspace because I've given a lot of tutorials about that. So let me just try to find the one. All right, I'll just choose. I think this might be the right one, but I'm going to be careful. So I'll just choose this implementation of the brands database because all we really care about now is the filter. So we can add a view and make it a nice gallery quickly. Just add a view, choose gallery, name it, and click create. But what's most important here is the filter. So when we add a filter, what we can do is where the brand's country property. So we choose the property, the country property within that brand's database. And it's a roll-up property because of the way we have this configured, that country automatically populates when you choose the city. So when the country property for the brand equals, okay, I chose the wrong brands database. I've got so many. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this particular demonstration. But what you would see here if you chose the related brands database, and this is not the related brands database, but if the database that you are creating this linked view of is related to the database for which you're creating a template, I hope that makes sense, then the top item for you to choose from here is going to be the template that you're creating. So when you choose the template, then it serves as a placeholder for this filter. And then when you create a new country with that template, then that placeholder template item becomes that country that you're creating. So I'm going to delete this sample database, or I'm just going to delete this whole new sample template and go back into our city template that I had previously created. And so this linked brands database is the right one. It is this brand that's related to the city's database using the relation property. And so therefore within the filter, where the city is the city template that we're creating, the city will be replaced. So I misspoke when I was looking for the country. We're juggling a lot of geographic elements here, where the city is equal to the city template. So this item here is just the city template. This is not an actual city. It's the template that we're editing. When you create a new city, it's going to replace this placeholder with the city that you're creating and then display only the brands and contacts where the city associated with them is the city that you're creating. So let me just show you one other little demonstration. We can create a new city using this template, and we'll call it sample city. So we have our brands and contacts filtered databases pre-populated here. Of course, we have no brands or contacts that are within the sample city yet, so they're empty. But if we go into our brands database, and if we add a brand, and we'll call it sample brand, we have this relation property for the city. And if we click on that, we can choose sample city. So then if we go back to our cities database, and if we open up sample city, we can see that sample brand now displays within sample city because we've chosen that city within the brand. I hope that makes sense to you. But these self-referencing filters are absolutely essential to utilizing the most powerful features of Notion. So you can see now the filter is filtered for cities that are sample city. Remember, it was produced from that placeholder template, that self-referencing filter within the template. And when we created this sample city, it replaced that placeholder with sample city. So I hope that that makes sense. And I'm going to go ahead and delete sample brand, and I'm going to delete sample city as well. So let's look at another question here. How can I set up Notion easy and quick for a team of 5 persons that the persons will use it? So do you know how to inspire them? So that is a good kind of getting started question. What I would recommend is visit some of the fundamental tutorials from Notion itself, as well as some of the most recognized kind of Notion experts. There's a variety of very basic templates that you can get started with. Notion's YouTube channel itself is really kind of offers like really kind of bite-sized fundamental tutorials that you can get an idea of, how to set up project management. It's really kind of the most basic examples of these different capabilities of Notion, and you can pick and choose the one that are maybe most relevant to you. But I would try to think long-term about your workspace. I would get familiar with the different features, and I would define your goals for your workspace and exactly what you want to do, because as Danny and Tim and some of the other Notion experts here in the chat know, a workspace is always evolving. And if you get down a certain path where you realize you're kind of doing it not wrong, but not necessarily in the best way towards your goals, then it can be a full weekend of kind of reconfiguring everything. So I would invest the time up front to learn the fundamentals through Notion's YouTube channel, and then reference the materials from other Notion pros, because they're really strong. Danny and Tim here are a few that I mentioned in the chat. They both produce a lot of good content. And then some of the other better known professionals are Marie Pullen, which you may have seen, and August Bradley is just an all-star right now on YouTube. And then if you visit Notion VIP, I've got a lot of resources, videos, posts, and templates there as well. And I actually just recently introduced an updated version of what I call my bulletproof workspace methodology that has a kind of a fully developed starter template for Notion that implements this primary recommendation I have, which is kind of centralizing information within master databases, that's going to make it really durable so that you can't really venture too far down a path if you're storing everything in databases, because that makes it really easy to kind of make reconfigurations if you keep your information architecture, if you will, really structured and stable. Any changes you want to make to the way that you access that information won't impact the underlying functionality of it. So thank you. Danny listed a few of those Notion experts that are producing really great content. And I think Kay, Danny, will you name Kay? Maybe link to his content as well, because he's pretty prominent in the community as well. So moving on, we have another question here. Can certain contacts be private to certain members? So that is a great question. That brings up kind of a recurring concern that a lot of Notion users have, and that is that when you share a linked view of a database, or just a view of a database, you have to grant access to the entire database. The person you share it with, the people that you share it with, are going to have the ability to access the entire database. They're not only going to be limited to that view. However, what you can do, and this is kind of a pain, but what I do in some circumstances for the clients that I work with is you don't share the entire database with the people that are receiving it, but you display the individual contacts one by one using Notion's share feature at the top right of the contact page. And that will allow the people that you share it with only to view those listings within wherever they're referenced. So that's a pain, probably unrealistic for most situations, but it is one workaround at the moment, and Notion knows that really is a priority. So pretty soon, we're hoping to see the ability to share kind of locked views of databases where the recipient doesn't have access to the full top level database. So we're getting back up to the end of our session here. Thank you so much for those great questions. They really were important. I hope the explanations made sense. I know that concept of a self-referencing filter can be a little bit tough to grasp. The best way to wrap your head around that is to apply it yourself. Figure out what you want to implement, and then work your way through it. You can reference my explanation, and then a few different pros have published YouTube videos specifically about that, so check them out. I will include some follow-up resources within the email. This webcast will be available for rewatching on YouTube. You can find me and Danny and Tim and everybody else on Twitter and on YouTube, and all the channels. And I'll look forward to seeing how you implement this system. And thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you on the web.